Welcome guys, Breakup Brad here. And in today's video, I'm going to help you fix one of the most common emotionally driven mistakes that people make after a breakup. And that is begging their ex for another chance. So whether it was one emotional text or a dozen, whether you cried in person, confessed your undying love over voicemail, or, just kept messaging when you knew you shouldn't, well, you're here now. And you're probably asking yourself, did I just ruin everything? Maybe you feel embarrassed. Maybe you feel powerless. Maybe you're worried your ex has lost all their respect for you. Well, here's the truth. Yes, begging was a mistake. But no, it doesn't mean that the door is closed forever. If you play your cards right, starting now, you can reverse the damage. You can rebuild attraction, and you can become someone that your ex is curious about again, even someone that they want back in their life. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step through a few things. Why begging backfires so hard, even if it feels like love in the moment. How to stop making things worse immediately. The psychological strategy that I call the reset impression, and how to become the version of you that your ex regrets letting go. And a few advanced tactics to quietly shift the power dynamic into your favor. Let's get into it. Now, begging seems rational when your world's been turned upside down. Your brain tells you, if I just show my ex how much I care, if I tell them I'll change, if I open up and show them my pain, maybe they'll realize that they made a mistake. But that instinct is like grabbing a hot stove. Your emotions push you to act, but the result is always damage. And from your ex's perspective, begging isn't romantic. It's overwhelming. It creates pressure, guilt, and most importantly, it flips the emotional dynamic in really the worst possible way. You go from being their equal to being a problem that they need to solve or avoid. Begging really says, you're in control. You have all the power. I need you more than you need me. And nothing kills attraction faster than emotional imbalance like that. And there's actually also a biological reason why this happens. In a 2010 study in the Journal of Neurophysiology, researchers found that the brain regions that were activated by romantic rejection are actually the same ones that are activated during cocaine withdrawal. That's why breakups can even feel physically painful. And it's why people do desperate things like beg, plead, or panic text their ex. So in the moment, begging feels like the only option. But what your ex feels, like I said, isn't romance or nostalgia. It's tension. And people move away from tension, not toward it. So some good news. You are not alone. I have worked with thousands of clients over the past decade who've made the same mistake. Some of them way worse than you probably. I'm talking about, 50 message text floods, surprise visits, crying at their ex's front door, the works. And many of those people still managed to get a second chance. So what made the difference? Well, first of all, they stopped digging. Because when you beg, you're in a hole. And every message, every emotional outreach is just another scoop of dirt. So the very first step, the non-negotiable one, is to stop reinforcing the damage, starting right now. So that means, no more apology texts, no more sending flowers, no more reaching out to mutual friends to, pass along a message, and definitely no more, Instagram posts aimed at your ex that say, still thinking of you or whatever. You have to cut off the emotional oxygen supply that's feeding your ex's negative perception of you. And, I get it. That silence will feel like torture at first, but it's the only path to regaining control of the dynamic. Let's say that your ex's last memory of you is a meltdown, a desperate message, maybe even a public display of heartbreak. That version of you is what they're holding in their mind right now. So our goal now is to replace that mental image with something better. And this is where you can use what I call the reset impression strategy. It's a psychological reset that changes the emotional association your ex has with you without you ever really needing to explain or justify what happened. Now, there's actually two versions of this strategy depending on how extreme your begging behavior was. If your mistake was, relatively mild, just one or two emotional texts, then you can move straight into a period of no contact. You'd want to go silent for at least a month or so. Don't comment on their social posts. Don't like their stories. And definitely don't reach out. Now, the science behind this is actually sound. A 2001 study in the Review of General Psychology showed that negative memories fade faster when they're not reinforced. So silence becomes your best friend here. You let the emotional intensity settle. You let them wonder. You give your ex, space to rewrite the story that they've told themselves about you. Now, on the other hand, if your begging was more extreme, daily texts, voice messages, angry outbursts, then you'll want to add a brief message that I call the eraser text before going silent. Now, this text it's really short, it's mature, and it leaves no emotional pressure. So, for example, you might say something like, "Hey, I just want to apologize for how I acted the other day. That really wasn't me. I let my emotions take over. No need to reply. I just felt like I owed you that." And then after you hit send, you disappear. No follow-up, no clarifying, no asking if they saw your message. Now, why is this strategy powerful? Well, it's because you're taking ownership without begging. You're showing self-awareness without trying to win them over. And by ending the message definitively, you create a sense of closure and control that your ex probably didn't expect from you. Now, remember, no contact isn't passive. It's not about just waiting and hoping. It's the most important period of emotional and personal transformation that you'll go through. You're not sitting still. You're preparing to reemerge as someone that your ex ideally won't recognize in the best way possible. Now, I actually had a client not long ago who, we'll call him Alex, who begged his ex every day for a week after the breakup. Long texts, midday calls, even sent her a playlist and a handwritten letter. And she eventually blocked him. And when Alex came to me, he was a wreck. But thankfully, he committed to the strategy. During no contact, he went silent. He hit the gym daily, picked up his guitar again, reconnected with friends, even got therapy for his anxiety. And believe it or not, by day 40 or so, she had unblocked him. And by day 50, she messaged him to ask how he was doing. She said something like, "You just seem different, more like the person that I met you early on." And that is the power of showing up for yourself during this phase. Because guess what? If you use no contact as a waiting room, your ex will still sense the neediness behind the silence. But if you use it as a launch pad, you'll come out the other side calmer, stronger, and more attractive than before. All right, now let's add another layer, a strategy that I call the emotional contrast trigger. Now, this happens when your ex is forced to reconcile two conflicting versions of you. Now, the needy, emotional, and panicked person that they remember. And then on the other hand, the composed, confident, growth-oriented person that they now see. Now, the contrast is jarring, and that is exactly why it works. Maybe your ex expected you to fall apart, to chase them forever, to keep proving your love. But instead, you've gone quiet. You're showing progress. You're not trying to win them. You're just living and becoming someone that they're no longer sure they understand. Uncertainty equals curiosity, and curiosity equals potential attraction. People don't miss you because you told them to. They miss you when the version in their memory doesn't match the version they now see. And that kind of confusion opens doors. All right, so this is the part where you can use indirect influence, social media, mutual friends, subtle signals to change how your ex perceives you without ever breaking no contact. Now, this isn't about fake positivity. It's about real, consistent evolution. You're not posting every day. You're not throwing obvious, look how happy I am traps online. You're just sharing glimpses of growth, a story from a hike, a photo with new friends, a screenshot of a new book or class you're taking. Basically, you're letting your ex and the world, see what you're becoming without rubbing it in their face. And when mutual friends, ask how you're doing, don't vent, don't drop hints. Just say, honestly, it's been tough, but I've been taking the time to just reset, focusing on some goals that I'd let slip. It's honestly been good for me. And that's all you need. It's not about trying to prove something. It's about showing, not telling. Now, eventually, you're going to feel ready to reopen communication. But don't mistake missing your ex for readiness. If your heart is still pounding, just thinking about texting them, wait longer. You want to reach out from a place of emotional neutrality. And when you do, keep it casual, keep it specific and low pressure. Avoid saying anything like, "I miss you," or "I've been thinking." Instead, just try something like, "Hey, random question. What was the name of that jazz bar you took me to downtown?" A friend is visiting and I really want to take them there. Now, what makes this kind of message effective? Well, it's a shared memory, but it's not a romantic one. It's a question, but not a deep one. It's short, specific, and crucially, it's not emotionally loaded. Now, if your ex replies warmly, great. If they don't panic. You've already done the work. You're still in control. And control, not just of the situation, but of yourself, is one of the most attractive qualities you can possess. All right, let's wrap this up with one more concept that explains why all of this works so well. And I call it emotional inversion. It's the moment when your ex goes from thinking, I have to protect myself from this person's emotions, to, why aren't they chasing me anymore? Now, that internal flip is really subtle, but it's really powerful. It happens when they no longer feel like they're the one avoiding your intensity. And instead, they feel like they're the one being left behind. And that emotional shift from being the person pursued to being the person ignored is what starts to actually recreate attraction. And none of it happens through logic. It happens through emotional energy, through the vibe that you're giving off. When you stop begging, when you stop explaining, when you stop chasing, and when you start growing in silence, that's when everything starts to flip. All right, I'm going to be blunt here. You are never going to talk your ex into loving you again. You can't argue your way into their heart. Attraction just doesn't work that way. Attraction is emotional, subconscious. And if you begged, cried, panicked, you essentially disrupted that energy. And now it's your job to rebuild it. But not with words, not with promises, with action, with silence, and with self-respect. And the irony is, when you stop trying to win your ex back and you start focusing on becoming someone that you'd be proud to date, that's when they start to wonder. That's when they start to feel again. And oftentimes, that's when they come back on their own. So if you have begged your ex and you're scared that it's too late, it's not. But only if you stop doing what doesn't work and start doing what does. Now, if you want a personalized roadmap based on your unique breakup situation, how long it's been, how bad the damage is, how your ex has been acting, please go take my free quiz at breakupbrad.com/quiz. It takes less than 5 minutes and it'll tell you exactly what your next move should be. And if you found this video helpful, please hit that like button, subscribe, and drop your questions in the comments below. I promise I respond to as many as I possibly can. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. See you next time.